The first mortar round hit the courtyard at 0247 hours, and the world inside the sealed compound at Ramadi turned to fire and screaming metal. Petty Officer Second Class Maya Reyes was halfway through updating the intelligence board when the second round tore through the operations center roof. The explosion wasn't close enough to kill her outright, but the RPG that followed, fired from somewhere beyond the blown outer wall, was close enough. The warhead punched through the reinforced window and detonated against the concrete support beam 6 feet from where she stood. The blast threw her sideways into a desk. Shrapnel bit into her left arm and ribs like a fistful of razors dragged across skin. She hit the floor hard, ears ringing, vision blurred, the taste of copper and dust flooding her mouth. Blood was already soaking through her uniform sleeve, running warm down her side beneath the plate carrier. She pressed her right hand against her ribs and felt the slick heat of it spreading. Not arterial, not immediately fatal, but bad enough. Across the room, Petty Officer Sykes, the 23-year-old who'd spent the last 3 days calling her PowerPoint and joking that Intel Pogues should stay in A-conditioned TOCs where they belonged, was pinned behind an overturned filing cabinet, his face pale and streaked with dust. Next to him, Torres was down, clutching his shoulder where a round had punched clean through. His M4 lay on the floor between them, just out of reach. "Radio's dead," Sykes shouted, his voice cracking. "We're cut off." Maya could hear the firefight outside. The senior SEAL element was 200 meters out, engaged with their own problem. No quick reaction force, no backup, just her, 2 junior SEALs, and a corpsman somewhere in the back room trying to keep the comms tech from bleeding out. She pushed herself up on one elbow, vision swimming. Through the shattered window, she could see muzzle flashes moving closer. Insurgents. Coordinated. Disciplined. The kind of assault that didn't happen by accident in Ramadi during the surge. Someone had planned this. Someone knew the compound layout. And now they were pushing toward the building, using the smoke and chaos as cover. Sykes fired a burst from his rifle. The weapon clicked. Empty. He yanked the magazine, fumbled for a fresh one, slammed it home. Pulled the charging handle. Nothing. Jammed. Shit. He slapped the forward assist, tried to clear it. The bolt was locked up. Torres tried to reach for his sidearm with his good hand, but the blood loss was hitting him fast. His movements were slow, clumsy. He wasn't going to make it to his weapon in time. Maya's mind cut through the pain with a cold, sharp clarity she'd learned to trust years ago. The insurgents were 30 seconds from the door. Maybe less. Sykes was unarmed. Torres was combat ineffective. The corpsman was busy. And somewhere in the smoke and gunfire outside, the men who actually wore tridents were fighting their own battle. "Hope you brought your gym card. Not your rifle, Reyes." Sykes' voice from 2 days ago. Laughing. Dismissive. The memory flickered and died. She looked at Torres' rifle on the floor, then at the blood running between her fingers, then at the door. The only thing standing between a breach and a massacre was her. 48 hours before the mortars started falling, Maya Reyes had arrived at the compound with a rucksack, a laptop case, and the kind of quiet that made people assume she didn't belong. The Ramadi SEAL compound wasn't much to look at. T-walls, Hesco berries, and a cluster of prefab buildings baking under the Iraqi sun. It was small, functional, and designed for a tight-knit platoon that ran direct action missions in one of the most violent cities in Ulaanbaatar province. Maya wasn't part of that platoon. She was a temporary intelligence augment, pulled in to analyze pattern-of-life data and map the insurgent networks that had been hammering coalition forces since the surge began. Her job was to sit in the operations center, connect the dots, and brief the shooters before they went outside the wire. She'd done this work before. Twice, actually. Army Military Intelligence, first rotation in 2004, second in Mosul in 2005. That second deployment had been the one that stuck with her, the one where her convoy hit an IED en route Tampa and she climbed out of the burning Humvee with a rifle in her hands and returned fire until the QRF arrived. She'd cross-trained with a cultural support team after that, learned to operate in environments where being a woman was either an asset or a liability depending on who was watching. She'd earned her combat patch the hard way, in the kind of firefights that didn't make it into PowerPoint slides. But none of that mattered, hey. The moment she walked into the operations center, she could feel it, the wall. Not hostile, exactly. Just distant. Professional. The kind of cold courtesy that said, you're not one of us, and you never will be. The two junior SEALs working support, Sykes and Torres, looked up when she set her gear down, then looked away just as quickly. The comms tech gave her a nod that didn't reach his eyes. The Navy corpsman didn't even look up from his medical kit inventory. Sykes was the first one to speak. Young, maybe 23, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Intel Bobby, oh. He grinned at Torres. Didn't know we were running a daycare now. Torres laughed, but it was half-hearted. He had more deployments under his belt than Sykes. He knew better than to judge too quickly. But he didn't stop him, either. Maya didn't react. She'd heard worse. She unpacked her laptop, logged into the SIPR terminal, and started pulling up the network map she'd been working on for the past week. Her hands moved with the kind of calm efficiency that came from muscle memory, scarred knuckles from hand-to-hand training, nails cut short, no jewelry. The sleeve of her uniform rode up slightly as she reached for a cable, exposing the edge of a tattoo on her left shoulder. A faded Ranger tab. Beneath it, initials, MR, and a date, 2005, Mosul. Sykes didn't notice. He was too busy making jokes. Stay in your lane, Reyes, he said when she asked where the latest SIGINT reports were stored. We'll handle the real work. You just keep the slides pretty. She found the reports herself. That afternoon, she briefed Lieutenant Commander Brennan, LC, to the platoon, on a new insurgent cell operating in the industrial district. Her analysis was thorough, methodical, backed by 3 separate intelligence streams. Brennan listened, asked good questions, and nodded when she finished. He respected her work. She could tell. But when Sykes muttered something about overcautious desk jockeys on the way out, Brennan didn't say a word. Maya stayed in the operations center that evening, updating the target folders and running probability models on insurgent movement patterns. Every 15 minutes, she stood, stretched, and walked the perimeter of the room. Her eyes tracked exits, fields of fire, dead zones. Instinct. The kind of thing you didn't forget once you'd learned it the hard way. No one noticed. She was capable, experienced, trained, and completely invisible. The disrespect started small, the way it always did. Then it grew teeth. The first real cut came during the mission brief on the second morning. Maya stood at the front of the operations center with a tactical map pulled up on the screen behind her, red circles marking 3 locations in the industrial district. She'd spent the previous night cross-referencing SIGINT intercepts with local informant reports and drone footage from the past 72 hours. The pattern was clear. A new insurgent cell was operating within 2 kilometers of the compound. Coordinated. Disciplined. The kind of group that didn't move without a plan. Based on the comms traffic and movement patterns, she said, keeping her voice level and professional, I assess this cell is preparing for direct action against coalition forces. Possibly this compound. Recommend we increase security posture and... Overcautious. Sykes leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He didn't even look at the map. We've been running ops in this sector for 3 months. If there was a credible threat, we'd know about it. Maya kept her eyes on the screen. The intercepts suggest. The real operators don't need a spreadsheet to tell them how to fight, Reyes. Sykes glanced at Torres, looking for backup. Torres shifted uncomfortably but didn't disagree. We've got eyes on the ground. Human intelligence. You're looking at data from a desk. She wanted to tell him that data from a desk had saved entire platoons in Mosul. That pattern analysis had identified the cell that killed her convoy team leader before they could hit another patrol. But she didn't. She turned to Lieutenant Commander Brennan instead, who'd been watching the exchange in silence. LC, the threat profile is. Noted, Brennan said. He nodded once, his expression unreadable. We'll keep it in mind. Good work, Reyes. But he didn't tell Sykes to stand down. Didn't correct him. Didn't defend the analysis. Maya sat down and let the brief move on. The second scene came that afternoon, when she made a supply run to the compound's armory. She needed to verify the inventory on the demolitions kit. Part of her job was to track sensitive items, even if no one thought Intel Barbie had any business near explosives. The comms tech, a wiry specialist named Garrett, was already inside, signing out gear for a mission the next day. Non-shooters stay outside, he said when she stepped through the door. He didn't look up from his clipboard. You need something? Put in a request. I'm doing a sensitive items check, Maya said evenly. It's on the... I said stay outside. Garrett made a show of counting magazines, taking his time, letting her wait in the doorway like she was bothering him. When he finally moved aside, she stepped in and immediately saw the problem. C4 charges and blasting caps stored in the same container, less than 3 feet apart. Improper. Dangerous. The kind of mistake that happened when people got complacent. She moved the blasting caps to the proper storage locker without saying a word. Garrett rolled his eyes. Really? You're gonna lecture me on explosives now? No, Maya said quietly. Just following protocol. He muttered something under his breath and walked out. She stood there for a moment, alone in the armory, staring at the rows of rifles and ammunition. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. But the knot in her chest tightened just a little more. The third cut came the night before the attack, and it was the one that should have broken her. The compound had a makeshift gym in one of the storage containers, a pull-up bar welded to the frame, some free weights, a bench that had seen better days. Maya went there after her shift, the way she always did. Physical training kept her sharp, kept her mind clear. She grabbed the bar, pulled herself up, and started her set. Controlled. Steady. 20 representatives without stopping. She was on her 15th when she heard the laughter. Sykes and another junior SEAL, a kid named Harris who'd barely said 2 words to her, was standing near the entrance, watching her with the kind of smirks that said they'd been talking about her before she noticed them. Trying to earn your trident, Reyes. Sykes called out, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. That's cute. Real cute. Harris laughed. Maybe she thinks if she does enough pull-ups, they'll let her on the real team. Maya finished her set. 20 representatives. She dropped from the bar, grabbed her towel, and wiped her hands. Her jaw was set. Her breathing controlled. She didn't look at them. Didn't respond. The corpsman, Doc Ramirez, was sitting on the bench press nearby, pretending to check his phone. He'd been there the whole time. He didn't join in, but he didn't stop them, either. Maya walked past Sykes and Harris without a word. She'd been here before. Different faces, same script. The scars from Mosul weren't just physical. They ran deeper than shrapnel ever could. But she kept walking. What none of them saw, what none of them could see, was the insurgent cell Maya had identified in her brief. The one Sykes had dismissed. The one no one had taken seriously. They were moving into position around the compound. Watching, waiting, counting the guards, timing the patrols. The attack was coming, and no one had listened. The attack came at 0245 hours, exactly the way Maya had said it would. The first mortar round hit the northwest corner of the compound, blowing apart a HESCO barrier and sending a shower of dirt and concrete into the courtyard. The second and third followed within seconds, coordinated, precise, walking fire across the compound perimeter. The insurgent cell wasn't guessing. They knew the layout. They knew where the vulnerable points were. Inside the operations center, Maya was updating the night intelligence log when the fourth round hit close enough to shake the walls. The lights flickered. Someone shouted outside. Then the radio crackled. Fragmentary reports from the observation posts, voices tight with urgency. Contact. 3 sides. Heavy volume. The senior SEAL element was 200 meters outside the wire on a direct action mission. They'd left 30 minutes earlier, hunting a high-value target in the industrial district. That left 5 people inside the compound. Maya, Sykes, Torres, Doc Ramirez, and Garrett the comms tech. Sykes grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Where the hell are they? Maya was already at the tactical display, pulling up the security camera feeds. She could see muzzle flashes on 3 sides, east, north, and west. Small arms fire stitching across the T-walls. Then she saw the RPG team, 40 meters out, moving with the kind of discipline that said these weren't amateurs. Former Iraqi army, maybe, or someone who'd trained them well. "They are pushing the main building," she said. "Get." The first RPG hit the communications array on the roof. The explosion tore through the radio mast and sent shrapnel raining down on the courtyard. Every external comm link went dead in an instant. The second RPG came through the window. Maya saw the flash half a second before the warhead hit the support beam 6 feet from where she stood. The blast picked her up and threw her sideways into a desk. She hit hard, her head snapping back, her ears ringing so loud she couldn't hear her own breath. Heat washed over her face. Then pain, sharp, immediate, spreading across her left arm and ribs like someone had dragged a handful of broken glass across her skin. She rolled onto her side, gasping. Blood was already soaking through her sleeve. She pressed her hand against her ribs and felt wetness spreading beneath her plate carrier. Not arterial, not immediately fatal, but bad. Across the room, Torres was down. He'd been standing near the window when the RPG hit, and a piece of shrapnel had punched clean through his shoulder. He was on his back, teeth gritted, trying to reach for his rifle with his good hand. His M4 lay on the floor 3 feet away, just out of reach. Sykes was still at the window, firing controlled bursts. His face was pale, streaked with dust and sweat. "Radio's dead," he shouted. "We're cut off." Maya forced herself up on one elbow. Through the shattered window, she could see the insurgents advancing. 6 men, moving in a staggered line, using the smoke and darkness as cover. 40 meters out. Then 35. They were disciplined, methodical, and they were coming for the building. Sykes fired another burst. Then his rifle clicked empty. He dropped the magazine, fumbled for a fresh one, slammed it home. Pulled the charging handle. Nothing. He yanked it again. The bolt wouldn't move. Jammed. Shit. Shit. He slapped the forward assist, tried to clear it. The rifle was done. Torres tried to sit up, but the blood loss was hitting him fast. His movements were slow, uncoordinated. Doc Ramirez was crawling toward him from the back room, medkit in hand, but incoming fire pinned him behind an overturned desk. Garrett was in the corner, shouting into a backup radio that might not even be working. The insurgents were 30 meters out. Maya looked at Torres's rifle on the floor, then at the blood running between her fingers, then at the window. Training took over. Not heroism, not bravery, just muscle memory from Mosul, from the convoy ambush, from the firefight she'd been in when people stopped seeing her as just intel and started seeing her as another rifle in the fight. She pushed herself to her feet, grabbed Torres's M4, and checked the magazine. Half empty. 15 rounds, maybe less. She moved to the window, her left arm screaming, ribs on fire, vision swimming. "Reyes, get down." Sykes was yelling, his voice cracking. "You're gonna get yourself killed." She didn't answer. She brought the rifle up, seated it against her shoulder, and found her sight picture through the ACOG. The insurgents were 25 meters out now, moving fast. She controlled her breathing, in, hold, out, and squeezed the trigger. Controlled bursts. 2 rounds. 3. The lead insurgent dropped. She shifted to the second target. 2 more rounds. He went down hard. The others scattered, diving for cover behind a pile of rubble. Good. That bought them 10 seconds. Maya moved to Doc Ramirez's position, keeping low. He was still pinned, trying to reach Torres. She grabbed his backup sidearm, a Beretta M9, and turned to Sykes, who was staring at her like he'd just seen a ghost. "Cover the left flank," she said. Her voice was cold, flat, absolute. "Now." He took the pistol, hands shaking, nodded. The firefight intensified. Maya could hear the insurgents regrouping, shouting orders. She moved between positions, bleeding, firing, forcing herself to think past the pain. She spotted movement through a blown section of the western wall. 3 insurgents trying to flank, moving low and fast. She grabbed a flashbang from Torres's kit, pulled the pin, and threw it blind through the gap. The explosion lit up the courtyard. She was already moving, rifle up, firing into the disoriented group. 3 down. The bodies didn't move. Behind her, Doc Ramirez finally reached Torres and started working on the shoulder wound. Garrett's voice cut through the chaos. He'd gotten the backup radio working. QRF inbound. 6 minutes. 6 minutes. The insurgents weren't stopping. They were regrouping for final push. Maya could see them massing near the north wall, maybe a dozen fighters. If they breached, 6 minutes wouldn't matter. Everyone inside would be dead. She made a decision. Torres's rifle had an ACOG scope. Better optics. Better range. She grabbed it, checked the magazine, full, and looked at the roof access ladder near the back of the room. Exposed. Suicidal. But it was the only angle that would give a line of sight to their rally point. She moved toward the ladder. Reyes, don't. Sykes screamed. That's suicide. She didn't stop. She climbed, every rung sending fire through her ribs, blood dripping from her arm onto the metal rungs. She reached the roof, flat and exposed under the night sky, and moved to the edge. From here, she could see them. The insurgent rally point. 12, maybe 15 fighters regrouping behind a stack of rubble, preparing for the final assault. She dropped prone, ignoring the pain, and brought the rifle up. Found her sight picture, controlled her breathing, and fired. One shot, one target down. Shift. Another shot. Another target. Methodical. Disciplined. No wasted movement. No panic. Just training in the cold certainty that if she didn't stop them here, everyone below her died. 4 more dropped before they realized where the fire was coming from. By then, it was too late. The rest broke and ran, scattering into the darkness. The QRF arrived 6 minutes later, hums roaring through the gate, dismount spreading out to secure the perimeter. They found Maya still on the roof, rifle trained on the rally point, blood soaking through her plate carrier and pooling on the concrete beneath her. The firefight was over, but she didn't lower the rifle until the QRF team leader climbed up and gently took it from her hands. The QRF pulled Maya off the roof like she was made of glass. 2 SEALs from the arriving platoon climbed the ladder and found her still in firing position, rifle trained on the darkness beyond the compound walls, blood pooled beneath her on the concrete. Her left arm hung limp at her side. Her breathing was shallow, ragged. When they touched her shoulder, she flinched but didn't lower the weapon until one of them gently took it from her hands. "We got it, Petty Officer," the SEAL said quietly. "We got it." They helped her down the ladder, one rung at a time, her legs barely holding her weight. By the time her boots hit the ground inside the operations center, the adrenaline was fading and the blood loss was catching up. The room tilted. Someone caught her before she fell. Lieutenant Commander Brennan stepped through the door 30 seconds later. He was a 15-year veteran with 3 combat deployments and the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet without him saying a word. He'd been outside the wire when the attack started, hunting a high-value target 2 clicks away. The moment the QRF call came through, he'd broken off the mission and come straight back. Now he stood in the operations center, taking in the scene with the cold, methodical assessment of someone who'd seen too many firefights to count. The shattered window, the blood on the floor, the scattered brass casings, the overturned furniture and scorched walls. Outside, his men were dragging insurgent bodies into rows for accountability. 9 confirmed KIA, maybe more in the darkness. He looked at Torres, who was sitting against the wall with Doc Ramirez working on his shoulder. Then at Garrett, still clutching the backup radio. Then at Sykes, who stood near the window with the corpsman's pistol still in his hand, his face pale and streaked with dust. Then Brennan looked at Maya, who was leaning against a desk with a medic trying to cut away her sleeve to get at the shrapnel wounds. Who held this? Brennan's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was weight behind it. Sykes swallowed hard. He looked at Maya, then back at Brennan. His voice cracked when he spoke. "She did, sir." He paused, like he couldn't quite believe the words coming out of his mouth. All of it. Brennan's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer to Maya, studying her face, then her blood-soaked plate carrier. The medic had pulled her uniform sleeve down to expose the shrapnel wounds on her arm, and that's when Brennan saw it. The tattoo on her left shoulder. A faded Ranger tab, black ink, worn at the edges. Beneath it, 2 initials, MR, and a date, 2005, Mosul. Brennan went very still. Reyes, he said slowly. His voice had changed. Quieter now. Something like recognition, or maybe disbelief. You're Miguel Reyes' sister. It wasn't a question. Maya lifted her head. Her vision was swimming, but she met his eyes and nodded once. Barely. Yes, sir. The room went silent. Miguel Reyes, Ranger, 3rd Battalion, 75th Regiment, KIA in Mosul, 2005, during a close-quarters firefight in the Yarmouk district. He'd taken 3 rounds holding a doorway so his team could extract a wounded man. Posthumous Silver Star. The kind of operator whose name got passed around in SOF circles with a kind of reverence reserved for legends. Brennan had served with him. Not in the same unit, but on the same mission. He'd been a junior SEAL then, part of a joint task force running operations in northern Iraq. Miguel Reyes had pulled him out of an ambush when a patrol went sideways. Saved his life. Brennan had never forgotten. He looked at Maya for a long moment, then glanced at Sykes and the others. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something cold and hard. 9 insurgents KA, Brennan said, his voice carrying across the room now. Compound held. No friendly fatalities. He turned back to Maya. That's what you did tonight. Sykes looked like someone had punched him in the chest. His face had gone from pale to gray. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally looked at Maya with something that might have been shame. Doc Ramirez, who'd been quiet all week, who'd watched the jokes and the dismissals and never said a word, stepped forward. He straightened, came to attention, and saluted her. It was slow, deliberate, an unspoken apology that carried more weight than words ever could. Maya didn't return it. She couldn't. Her arm was barely functional. But she nodded once, and Ramirez lowered his hand. Brennan knelt down next to her as the medics started working in earnest, packing gauze into the wounds, prepping in 4 line. He was quiet for a moment, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Your brother saved my life in Mosul, he said. And tonight, you saved theirs. He gestured toward Sykes and Torres. You're one of us, Petty Officer Reyes. You always were. The contrast was absolute. The loud disrespect of the past 3 days, every joke, every dismissal, every condescending comment, evaporated in the silence that followed. What replaced it wasn't applause or celebration. It was something quieter, heavier, respect. Maya didn't smile, didn't gloat. She was too tired for that. Too much blood lost, too much pain cutting through the haze. She just looked at Brennan and nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Just did my job, sir. Brennan held her gaze for a moment longer, then stood and turned to his team. Get her on the next medevac. Priority 1. Sykes was still standing near the window, staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Like the person he'd been mocking for 3 days had just been replaced by someone he didn't recognize. Someone who'd saved his life. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. But when the medics lifted Maya onto the stretcher and carried her toward the door, Sykes stepped aside and watched her go. And for the first time since she'd arrived at the compound, he looked like he understood exactly who she was. 3 days later, Maya was medevaced to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. The surgery took 4 hours, shrapnel removal, muscle repair, antibiotics for the infection that had already started setting in. The doctors said she was lucky. 2 inches to the right and the shrapnel would have hit her lung. Lucky. She didn't feel lucky. She felt tired. Before they loaded her onto the Black Hawk for the flight out of Ramadi, Sykes found her in the aid station. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be there. Then he stepped inside and pulled something from his pocket. A challenge coin. Seal trident embossed on one side. His name engraved on the other. He didn't say much, just held it out to her. His hand steady but his eyes carrying the weight of 3 days' worth of realizations he couldn't take back. For what it's worth, he said quietly. Maya took the coin, turned it over in her hand, nodded once. He left without another word. The SEAL platoon wrote a formal commendation letter. Her actions were documented, witnessed, and sent up the chain. A bronze star with valor was recommended. Approved. Presented 6 months later at a ceremony she didn't ask for and didn't want. But Maya didn't stay in the spotlight. She recovered stateside, did her physical therapy, and returned to duty. Back to intelligence work. Back to pattern analysis and briefing rooms and mapping insurgent networks. The same job she'd been doing before Ramadi. The same job she was good at. Because that's what quiet professionals do. They don't chase recognition. They do the work. And when the moment comes, when everything breaks and the world needs someone who can stand when others fall, they are ready. The truth is, there are thousands of people like Maya Reyes. Intelligence analysts who've seen combat. Support staff who've returned fire. Women in forward operating bases who've been dismissed, underestimated, and mocked until the moment their competence becomes the only thing standing between survival and catastrophe. They don't wear their scars on the outside. They don't demand respect. They earn it in the seconds that matter most. When the mortars are falling and the radios are dead and someone has to make the decision to climb that ladder, take that shot, hold that line. And when it's over, they go back to work. Because respect isn't given for what you wear or where you stand. It's earned in the seconds when everything breaks, and you're the only one left standing. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been the quiet professional in the room, drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you know someone who serves in silence, who does the work without asking for recognition, take a moment to thank them. They've earned it.